It is already a great pleasure and a privilege to welcome you, Lisa. I love that you're smiling from the jump. Your enthusiasm for these topics, and I think that's really what drew me to invite you. Is that I am magnetized to people who exude that easy energy. There's no forcing. It just comes naturally to be so enthusiastic. And someone told me that the origin of the word enthusiastic is being infused with spirit,
Like that.
because it is that, there is an entheo element to it, being in spirit, in God. And yeah, those are the people that I really am so easily inclined to invite to have a discourse with. And I'm grateful that you say yes, because, anyone says yes, because I don't have much to offer other than my own genuine intellectual curiosity, my own desire, unified with you and Alex Zach and Jacob Diaz and all these real champions of capital H health and the process that is health, to shift, because there's no time like now to lead.
Mm.
There's no time like now to change and reconsider and adjust our perspective. And when I hear you speak about the merits of homeopathy and practicing with tissue salts, and really the most noble quest of being your own physician, because and we'll talk about this, to do an accounting of one's medical history, whatever form a doctor may give you is one thing, but that would be an arduous process for you to sit down with me and say, take me through the physical, emotional, mental traumas of your life and significant experiences. And then there's still a distance between you and I of how that would actually register in my body, my relationship to those experiences, etc. And that's where I'm finding the greatest opportunities for real healing, real health, in my own experience, to be relentlessly curious about my story, what it would take, what unique combinations of plants, minerals, metals, all of the wonderful things that are available to us in this realm. So, of all the places to start, let's start at the most present, because I just found out. I've been sort of offline and taking a little break from all of the education, because, as I told you, the last several years have been such a steep learning curve for me, and now is the time where I really get to practice. I've been in student mode, I've been in novice mode, and now, as I step into more coaching roles, I need to test what I think I know. So I've hit a little bit of a break on the resources aspect, and then I find out that you are offering this epic course, which I'm sure has taken a lot of planning and a lot of thought on your end. And maybe just in the last 12 months, whether or not people subscribe to this being a new year, it is a new calendar. We're all on board with that. And yet 2024, such as it was, certainly felt like it held a lot of dynamism in terms of people's changing and shifting, and people, finding resources like yourself. And so, would you give us a peek behind the curtain as to what it's taken to get you to this place where you feel, confident and competent enough to offer such a course to the public? And with that, welcome.
Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for the introduction. And yeah, just honor to be on here and just sharing homeopathy, because the world needs it, and the world doesn't even know why it needs it, because it hasn't got enough
Those are the
awareness.
best things. Those are the best things.
Yeah. So I did the course really because I know how overwhelming homeopathy can seem when you first. It's very simple with the whole concept of like cures like and trying to find a remedy to match, but there are over like 8,000 remedies, and a lot of the principles with homeopathy are almost the exact opposite of conventional allopathic medicine. So like even like from dosing, we say the minimum dose with homeopathy is where with allopathic, like you're drummed in, finish the course of antibiotics, or you must finish, and what's the named clinical ailment that you have, because that's how we find a drug. As where with homeopathy, we don't care about the named physical ailment, like we're treating the individual. So it's so much to get your head round. Like once you've got the fundamentals, it's really straightforward actually, as long as you can kind of take a step back. And I know what it's like to come from a background where I knew nothing about homeopathy. I sort of stumbled across it by chance when I'd kind of hit rock bottom with my daughter's health issues. And I was so amazed by what I found. But I really know what it's like to be in that place of newness and coming from a place of just not knowing how to go about it. And there weren't really, I signed up for a 4-year homeopathy course within a few weeks of seeing
Wow.
and witnessing the effects, because it was so, for me, mind-blowing that I was like, I have to study this. Wikipedia says it's quackery and pseudoscience and placebo, and it's not. So for me, it was like it found me and I had to study. But there wasn't really anything out there, for the beginner that resonated with me as to how to kind of get to grips with it. And so that's where, once I finished my studies and I was, having my practice, I actually thought where I can help people the most is by getting them to use it themselves for everyday issues, because so many health issues arise because we suppress them and we turn these acute inflammatory responses almost into chronic issues because we've suppressed the body. And actually, if everyone knew how to use homeopathy, and from the outset, then we probably wouldn't go on to get these chronic issues. Even when we have like mental trauma or a shock, which can create physical issues, homeopathic remedies deal with the mental side as well. So for me, that's my mission. Actually, homeopaths do amazing jobs with their practice and clinics, seeing patients with chronic issues and doing like really amazing work. But for me, like, having run my practice, I was like, actually, where I feel called to is to teach people how to use it for themselves and to know like what they can self-treat and what they need to see a homeopath for. So that's kind of how it came about. And I've run it now for about 2 to 3 years, but I've kind of refined it and I've built on it, and I've had people's questions and added extra bits, and like now it's like, this is, it contains everything I want it to contain. And yeah, it's really sort of comprehensive for getting people to start using it at home.
Oh, that's tremendously exciting, and congratulations to you for continuing, as you said, to refine that. And I'll plead my ignorance. Like I said, fairly new to your work in the last year. I didn't know that there'd been a couple iterations of this, and to hear you say that you feel great about this being, maybe smoothed out some of the rough edges there, and for this to be, yeah, that level of I'm very much invested in the education economy. I tell anyone with my wife is a water treatment engineer. I have several friends who are engineers or have a technical expertise. And my dream for most anyone with that is just hang your own shingle and charge whatever you want per hour and do a course or something, like, get out of the corporate world. Because, if you have that acumen, and you don't want to just abandon it and go work at a coffee shop because you're sick of corporate life, then I believe that there is a channel that people are carving out to now go do something like that, to just be lisastrbac.com or tomlomenzo.com or anything like that. And that frees us up, as Jacob Diaz and I talked about, and that episode just came out, so people will hopefully know his name. As you mentioned, the suppression tactics, I believe it's mostly due to people, aside from our poor relationship with discomfort. And people, we get it. It's not fun to be feverish or throwing up, or have skin. I would say my relationship with skin, because poison ivy and poison oak are what I'm embattled by at various. I have a little bit of it right now, actually.
You need Rust Tox, which
Okay,
is made out of poison ivy,
well, good.
and that's
Because in my world, Lisa, and in most people's, it's prednisone, and it's 2.5 weeks of brutal, dehydration. I'm an athlete, and when I get poison ivy in the summer, to then go take prednisone, and God forbid I want to have a beer with my tennis mates, then like, I mean, I remember the last time I took it was probably 2 years ago, and as I get healthier, especially in a well-rounded, holistic way. I think a healthy body is a sensitive body. So you have a healthy body, and then you're on the road and you spring for a fast food meal, and then you wonder why your stools are loose. I think that's a good thing. It's not like, oh my gosh, why.
absolutely.
And this is the balance too, is we are, as Alex Zek and others talk about, we are so amazingly resilient, to have to endure all of the unnatural things that we endure, or the choices we make, and we're still sleeping and smiling and running, and our minds are functioning. It's really amazing when I think about just how low, as Eileen McCusick talks about, people's batteries are so low, and
Mm.
yet they do so much. But as Jacob, so on one hand we have the impatient an uncomfortable relationship with discomfort that everyone tries to get out of that and escape. And I think, Lisa, so much of the misguided approach to healing or recovery is people saying, I got to get back to work. I don't have time
Mm.
for this. Like, and that would be such, I mean, well, and you can tell me, can you imagine the shift and the ease that people would enter into if they said, I'm just going to do what it takes, whatever this takes. And that's been my approach, to give myself some flowers, is whether it's injury or disease, especially with injury, is I would say, especially if I sought out a coach or a practitioner or something, not like, how much money and how long is it going to take for me to heal? I just say whatever it takes. I'm in
Mm.
it for the deep healing. I'm in no rush. So, how do you coach people through that as well? As people say, how long do I have to take this remedy for until I'm better? How do you address
So
that with people?
so you have to, I mean, it's so individual. And I think one of the things I teach on my course and in my books, and just generally share on, social media, is we don't actually know what healing looks like. We've been taught, like you've said, that healing by mainstream standards is we stop a symptom and that's it. But actually Herring, so he was a homeopath who documented the law of cure, which is what all like people that know about true healing, what true healing actually looks like. So this is something that we have to get familiar with, because when we have a fever or when we have symptoms, it can seem quite sort of scary because we want those symptoms to stop. But I'll talk through like what he actually said proper healing looks like. And what's interesting about Herring, so he was an allopathic doctor. While he was in medical school, he was asked by his mentor to write an article refuting homeopathy, because homeopathy had taken off and Hahnemann, the founder of homeopathy, was making waves. And so he wrote this piece, but he noticed that actually most of the time, every time he looked at it, it seemed to work. And then he got gangrenous finger because he was dissecting a dead body and his finger got infected. And the only cure he was told was to amputate his finger. Obviously, he wasn't very keen on that. And someone said to him, one of his friends that liked homeopathy said, look, why don't you just try homeopathy? So he'd already was slightly open-minded, but he took arsenicum, the remedy, which is made from arsenic, but it doesn't have any material dose in, and his finger was cured. And he was so amazed that he did a 180. He literally set up the world's first homeopathic medical school. He is known as the father of US homeopathy. He moved to the US. He became friends with Hahnemann, and he made such an impact in homeopathy. And he documented the law of cure. So through all his clinical observations, he could see these patterns, and we see it all the time. I've seen this with myself, with my kids, in my practice. So he said the first thing is from within to without. So stuff has to come out, and that can be discharges, it can be sweat, vomit, diarrhea, it can be words, but we eliminate, and that purging is healing happening. So that's the first one. Then he said we can get return of old symptoms, which is where things that haven't been properly cured in the past or have been suppressed might come back. So take someone that has had like this happened with my daughter. So she used to have lots of ear infections, and we use antibiotics. And when she started homeopathic treatment, she improved mentally and emotionally, but she started to get ear infections again. Now, I knew that was actually a good sign. It was her body being able to do what it needed to do, as long as we didn't suppress it back in, let it heal naturally. And she didn't then get ear infections after we'd got through the first sort of couple. And then we've got from top to bottom. So things actually move from top to bottom or within to without. So you'll see like rashes can quite often just move down the body, or if they're sort of here, they go to extremities. Have I said all of them? Do you know, I'm just going to look at my book.
This is,
I think
please,
that's all of them.
whatever it takes to get this out there, because that's news to me. I was familiar with Hahnemann. Herring's a new name to me, but that's a great biography, and it usually takes a crisis. I mean, my mentor from afar, Paul Chek, always talks about the pain teacher, and as I think you're alluding to, again, there are different traditions and articulations of this, that the lessons will repeat until they are learned and understood to a degree. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and so I mean, it does make perfect sense. And yeah, the last thing is just, and I kind of alluded to it, is it's from the most important organs will heal first.
Oh yeah.
So this is where you have to educate people, because quite often people will come. This is if you're seeing a homeopath for like some chronic issues. So say you've got like really severe eczema. That's normally the thing that drives you to go and get help, you know, the intolerable itching. But actually, what will happen is the eczema will probably be the last thing to go, because the skin isn't really the most vital organ. What you'll find is their mental and emotional state will improve first. The other fight, because the brain is obviously more important than the skin. And you'll know that you're healing because you'll feel like instinctively better, even if the thing that you've come about isn't getting better at first. So it's the body will always prioritize what it needs to heal the first, and it's not always what you want it to heal. Like that's, so there's that huge education piece, you know, around teaching people, look, this is what healing looks like, and it can be so different, like from one person. Like we can find amazing, almost miraculous healing for some people after a few doses, you know, of a remedy, and others it can take years, you know, and it can take that peeling back of layers. If there's been a lot of toxicity and a lot of medications, sometimes we might need to homeopathically detox those. So it's so individual, like it really is. And it's that education piece of, like, you know, managing people's expectations really as to what healing looks like and how long it can take.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for that overview, especially to put it that succinctly. And I've had these moments myself, these very humbling moments of where I have doubted the wisdom of my body. And those are mostly ego games, in my opinion. Just again, the discomfort, and you feel threatened, and especially on the injury front, as an athlete, to be robbed, you know, again, in our ego mind, you know, how dare you, body, you know, how dare you, spine, you know, do this to protect me, to protect yourself. And I mean, the scale of injuries, I'd love to get your take on this. If you uh I mean, yeah, do you work with athletes? Do you get people who come to you for, you know, this thing that they had surgery on, or this particular issue that's turned into chronic, whether it's arthritis or just immobility? Is that in your purview as well?
Personally, when I had my clinic, and now I don't have a practice because I focus purely
Oh,
on the teaching and writing, but
yeah.
when I had my practice, mine was more, my patients that I tended to attract were kids perhaps on the spectrum or emotional issues. But that's not to say homeopathy is amazing for injuries and things like that, and there are homeopaths that do specialize more with athletes. But the thing is, actually, it's quite niche, because athletes are generally very healthy and don't need, you know, as much, as not as so much demand. But I mean, some of the top athletes will use homeopathy. They'll have like arnica as standard, you know. I think even David Beckham, big UK footballer, he used homeopathy. There's sort of big names that use homeopathy that don't necessarily talk about it, or the media perhaps don't give it attention.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
you
that.
know what?
Oh, for sure. Well, I think Novak Djokovic is one of the most renowned for, and we still don't know what he does. Although I know he's connected to people here in the States, like if you know David Avocado Wolf or Shervin Jafaria, who runs Symbiotica, which is a really top flight supplement brand, and he's also, I mean, for so my theory on why, do you follow tennis? I mean, do you know much about him and his story or anything like
Well,
that?
I know about Djokovic because
Okay.
he's obviously Serb, and I mean, he was amazing for standing his ground
Mhm.
during the whole like COVID, you know, times.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not hugely into it, but I do obviously, you know, I can't not know about him. He's
Uh,
amazing.
oh, for sure. Well, and so I was just going to say quickly my theory as to why he's able to perform at such a high level, eating an exclusively plant focused diet, and whereas most people these days, if they say plant based, they will have lab made meat or synthetic grains or something like that. I mean, there's a difference between what he's doing and what the average person who just thinks that they need to go plant-based is doing. So that's my qualification. The tennis season, I mean, they're in Australia right now. They follow the sun. You know, it's one thing if you're playing tennis in the UK right now, or here in
Mm.
here in the United States. I think that would be hard, to eat seasonally like that. It's also, I mean, wildly demanding, but to tune into, yeah, I mean, whatever fruits and vegetables, grains are in season, I think that's something that supports him. Now he's almost 40, and I wonder what the longevity would look like if he did introduce some animal products into his life. I'm not in his ear. Part of this is to say that I agree with you that some of the, especially the athletes and certainly some of the wealthiest people in the world, this is one of the issues that I quickly discovered in the COVID years, was that a lot of the most wealthy, most influential members of the parasite class telling people to go do this and that, and it's one of the most classic examples of rules for thee and not for me, because I know, I've heard firsthand, secondhand from people who advise those people. Dr. Berlando has spoken about it. He said, I used to do spagyrics and homeopathy for some of the most well-known people in the world. They don't go to the urgent care clinic. They don't go to the hospital. They have people like you come and treat them and their families. And it's just not spoken about. And these are the inversions that we have to sort through, and we have to use our discernment to, and Lisa, like you, well, maybe you at one time, but certainly me in recent memory, a Google or Wikipedia search with a red flag warning, or seeing, the scary red letters on Instagram, used to be sufficient for me to say, well, that's settled. In my mind, I shouldn't touch that.
Yeah.
Now that's usually a green means go sign for me to look into that. So, and I want to, we'll come back on track. I was going to say, on the injury front, part of the reason why I asked about this is education around fascia part of your world yet, or on
Not
your
not
periphery?
not really, no, and I've started to, just start to follow some accounts that are talking about this, but the thing is, and this is the thing, there's so much to learn, and homeopathy is literally like never ending. So I kind of have times where I, stop reading my homeopathy books or new ones for a while,
Yeah.
and I kind of go into what's out there. But at the minute, I'm full on back into like just purely homeopathy, cut
Yeah.
out the noise that's out there. But yeah, no, just started to. So
Okay.
yeah.
What was your last departure from homeopathy? What was the last kind of new research you did?
Well, it's related really, but a lot of water. I mean, that is
Yeah.
so related to homeopathy.
Yeah.
And Veda Austin's, she's been on my podcast, and I've been
Oh,
to see a
brilliant.
lot of her talks. And I mean, that is, to me, sort of the missing link as to how homeopathy might work, because remedies are made in liquid and they're the energetic imprint. And then Eileen McCusick's work as well. There is so much overlap between homeopathy and Eileen McCusick. It's just the way it's administered is with tuning forks for her. With us, it's the remedies in a physical form. And that's why I think homeopathy is going to be much more, it's a stepping stone, because people are used to taking medicines in physical form, and people quite often don't even realize that homeopathy is energetic medicine. So they'll take them because they're pills and they can buy them and they come in a physical form. But for me, it's not much different than you're administering a mini tuning fork, actually, but just in a different form. So yeah, that's kind of where I've sort of been going into a bit. And then like, there's so much, isn't there? Like the end of COVID, I was a
Yes.
speaker on that, but all the talks, I was like, my God, it's like 200, episodes to watch. Like it's never ending, really, the amount that we can bring in. It's amazing. But
Were you on sort of the back end of shifting the paradigm into, because I haven't quite gotten, I mean, because what happens to me is I'll watch one of those videos with a Veda or an Andy Kaufman or a Dr. Tom Cowan, and then I'll have to go and really lean into that world. And but I'm now an ambassador affiliate for the end of COVID, because it just touches so many nodes of the web, and especially that latter half, to be, people being introduced to Veda's work or yours or something, to have a new health model is so, I mean, for 70 something dollars, it's
it's amazing.
it is.
Yeah.
And this is sort of this is something I grapple with as well. Are the value disparities, so your course that you're offering right now is something like 250 USD, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay. That's like all day for me, even if I had $2.50 in my pocket. And that's because I believe in the value, and we're in a time of value disparity. Is whatever your bloody hospital bill or doctor's visit would be, to say nothing of housing. That's the world that I'm in, especially around Greater Boston. It's personally, Lisa, it's really hard for me to digest that at times. Is to look at a
Mm.
home and say, I understand market dynamics and supply and demand and all that stuff. I mean, I think plenty of that is also sort of just narrative. I don't know if I don't think economic laws are natural laws. I
Mm.
don't, because I don't believe in scarcity. I don't believe in nature as competition. I believe in nature as
Yeah.
collaboration. I believe water seeking its level. I believe in harmony. And there's so many deceptive programs running out there. And the value one is weird too, because so many people opt for cheap and they don't really realize that the analogy made has been most people will seek out the cheapest gas option. And if you do the same with your food, because all you think of food as is fuel, you don't think of it as energy in how you and I may use that word, then that does sort of drive a really disparate value proposition for people. Like, it's just another expense, so I gotta keep a low bottom line, so I just gotta go for the cheap option. Which, before I forget, would you provide your definition too when you say taking a homeopathic remedy is actually an energetic experience? How would you describe that to someone who doesn't really have a concept of what that might mean?
So I often think, so it is energetic medicine, but I often think of homeopathy like it does really well with music analogies.
Hmm.
So if you think, and this even like when we're trying to find the right remedy, think how when you listen to a particular song, the right song in a particular moment can make your hair stand on end. And it's going to depend like which song is depending on which mood you're in. So if you're like feeling, say someone's just broken up with someone and they're feeling like, full of, they need to get that out, that kind of upset, maybe Fleetwood Mac, Go Your Own Way might be the song you need in that moment. But say that you're in a really anxious, kind of not even quite sure why you're anxious, just like this low level anxiety, maybe a 528 hertz meditative music might help, and that might be more like a remedy like aconite, which is quite a broad ranging remedy. Or maybe you need a song that's really peculiar and rare to your unique needs at that moment to make your hair stand on end, and that could be one of our smaller homeopathic remedies that's less well known. But it's going to depend on your state in that moment which remedy you need. And it will be why when someone says, I get asked this all the time. Every homeopath gets asked this. You like share maybe a story of a case. Oh, I had a child come along. I had a non-verbal autistic girl come along. I gave her a remedy and she then started to regain speech. And it'll be like, oh, suddenly everyone in that community wants to know what remedy you gave to help her speech come along. But it's like, it's not like that. I could tell you the name of the remedy, but you could take it and it will do nothing because it's not the match for you. It's not that resonance. It's not, hitting the right frequency. So homeopathy really is energy, and it starts to sound woo woo, and quite often people that are receptive to looking at homeopathy because it's in that pill form, when you start to explain it, normally people only go down that, start getting curious as to how it's actually made and what's in it once they've had a positive experience. And I see this on when I used to teach my courses all live, and people were very new to it. They'd had a few like positive effects of homeopathy, and I'd say, oh, this is how the remedies are made, so there's actually like nothing chemical in it, and their faces would be like, what? And it actually completely makes you look at the world in a completely different view, because it makes you realize we don't live in a material realm. It makes you wonder, well, if actually they've lied to us about this, because if I go on Wikipedia and I see what it has to say about homeopathy, and it says it's quackery and placebo at best and pseudoscientific, it's like, well, if that's the case, then what else are they lying about? So this is kind of what happens. It opens your mind to everything. And I think that's one of the reasons, I don't like to say they, but going back to what you were saying earlier about, parasitic class using homeopathy, it's interesting sometimes because I think, do you know what, the royal family, like, let's not get started about the book, but they do talk
Oh,
about homeopathy a lot.
yeah.
Bizarrely, King Charles is the patron of the Faculty of Homeopathy in the UK.
Yeah. What do you make of that? You know, because and people talk about his regenerative gardens
Mm.
and things like that, and it's tough to. I mean, no one is purely evil. No one is purely ignorant. No one is purely, you know, anything. You know, someone once said, "No one is so brilliant that they're wrong about everything." You know, no one is
Mm.
able to constantly deceive themselves like that. So I know people, you know, who appreciate a good conspiracy, and I mean, there's plenty of things to be wary of when it comes to any ruling class, especially, you know, one of the longest standing at all. I mean, shout out to Steel Falconer, you know, people who are brave enough to take on that beast. So what do you make of that? You know, do you think that's
Oh,
authentic? Do you think it's an agenda? How do we sort through that
do you know?
mire?
I don't know. It's very strange in the UK because most of the UK absolutely love the royal family. I've never
I
been a
know.
royalist. Like for
Really?
me, I'm like, what? Like this is really bizarre. You know, I've always thought, even as
It
a
is
kid,
bizarre.
we have people that like live in golden,
Yeah.
well, not golden like palaces, but you know, drive golden coaches around London and
Yep.
like what? You know, I've always found it really weird, to be honest. So I honestly, I don't really know. I mean, homeopathy has always been used by the royal family, and
Mhm.
they've always been really. I find this slightly odd. You know, they've always been really big advocates of it. King Charles, in particular, used to get a lot of stick. Like the press would actually ridicule him, you know, years
Yep.
ago before he became king, about how much he used to talk about using homeopathy for his animals and on his
Mhm.
farms and for him. And so my gut instinct is actually the reason we don't hear about homeopathy. It's not the individuals not talking about it, it's the press
Yeah.
that stops us hearing about it, because you can find enough quotes, and there are books written. Dana Ullman wrote one, I can't remember the name, The Homeopathic Revolution, and he talks about all the well-known people throughout history, right up until today, who use homeopathy and who talk about it. You know,
Mm.
celebs that you wouldn't think of, and it doesn't get any press. And there's a much bigger insidious layer, I think, as to why we don't hear. I don't know about the royal family. I mean, the one of the big homeopathic pharmacies in London has a royal warrant,
Mm.
and King Charles is, you know, I think on good terms with the homeopath that runs it. So, you know, I know people that work in that pharmacy. So I don't know, and it's
Yeah.
quite easy, isn't there, for when it, I see this sort of in the truther community as well. As soon as something positive happens or someone speaks out, then it's like, oh, they're a shield. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like,
Yeah.
I just don't know. Yeah, I really don't know, I guess, is the answer to that, as to, yeah.
Well, that was a I appreciate your stepping back to look at that, and certainly, like I said, uh, yeah, I mean, no one can accuse King Charles of being a shill. He's, you know, he's deep in it anyway, and then, you know, it's the, gosh, just the, you could get whiplash doing what some people do, which is, or some people speak out. You know, if it's Trump saying he's going to get rid of fluoride, and people are like, savior, thank God, what a guy, you know,
Mm,
what a stand up guy, and I don't get caught up, and those people, I think we can all, as people sharing a human's experience with King Charles, Donald Trump, whomever, Bill Gates, and any boogeyman, of course, all the nameless ones that we don't know, don't care about, because they don't really care about us, which is fine. You know, I care about myself. I care about people. That's what moves the needle. They're all having the human experience, and many of them, I won't speak for the king. They have their own fear around dying, around falling into ill health, losing their vitality. Of course, if you follow the likes of Steve, among others, we also have a glimpse that, you know, people like royal families and ruling classes, they have access to even deeper energetic, esoteric, spiritual practices,
mm,
that do have to do with, you know, how you prolong life and longevity. I mean, God bless the queen, she sure had a long life. So and but all that to say, I mean, we all have that responsibility to get curious enough about what it would take to sustain ourselves, and it usually does not look like, from my own perspective, the outsourcing, the sacrificing of our energy, certainly our ability to respond, our responsibility to ourselves, our families. As I said to you offline, we can't pour from an empty cup. And no matter how much you fill that cup, there will be a hole in it if you think that anytime, things frighten you, that I would rather have the president, the king, the local ruler, the local mobster, my local mommy and daddy, sometimes literally my mom and dad, sort that out for me, then that's a disempowering experience. And that's not what I'm about, because I just see the pitfalls in that. And shoot, it's not easy. My wife and I just had this conversation the other day, as we plan to expand our home and make decisions around that. Her father has been in the trade since he was a teenager, and he's a roofer now. He's a hard man. He's from a real kind of classic American background of like, we're just going to make things fucking happen by any means. And generally, our reaction is to defer to him. Dad, Greg, what do you think we should do when we're doing X, Y, and Z? And bless his heart, he certainly has an opinion on everything. And I just said to her the other day, in our pursuit of radical responsibility, sovereignty, or anything like that would be something we have to nip in the bud. And sort of the practice that I take is, if I ever am actively seeking someone's advice, I would say first, here's what I plan to do. What do you think? And then, take it. I forget where I learned that, but basically the messaging being, if you just say, tell me what you think I should do, first of all, that's relinquishing your responsibility. Or if you do that and then do something the opposite, then someone's just going to think that you didn't listen to them at all. So there are countless examples of that. Something you brought up earlier when it comes to symptom naming is, it's sort of a cliche, sort of a joke, truism type thing. But to go to the doctor and say, hey doc, I have low back pain, and they ask you about it, and you describe it, and you say, oh yeah, you have lumbar osteoporosis or whatever, and you say, what's that? And they say, it's low back pain. Okay, so you're just telling me what I just told you, and we're no closer to a root problem. So that sort of cheeky example aside, what is the homeopathic principle that encourages people to get away from labels? I certainly have my guesses and experiences with that from having learned from many of the presenters on the end of COVID. But what's your understanding of that principle and the merit to just letting someone have an experience without naming it?
Fundamentally, that is the absolute basic root of homeopathy, is we never diagnose and we don't ever label. And the amount of questions of you get, do I have to have a diagnosis to have treatment? It's like, no. So we treat the totality of the person, and it's always about treating the individual. Now, even when someone has got an ear infection or a sore throat or flu symptoms, we are always treating the individual in that state. So we're just looking objectively as to what symptoms has that person got. Are they achy? Are they restless? Are they anxious? And there is a kind of a method to do it. But with an acute situation like flu symptoms, it doesn't matter. Like, people are like, oh, is it COVID or is it flu? It's like, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Nope. Because the remedies don't work like that. The remedies are for, for example, let's take arsenicum, which is actually one of the number one remedies for people with COVID symptoms. And sometimes even I can get lazy, or we do it as it's a language issue, really. Like, for when we're presenting information, like on Instagram, I'll say, the top remedies for ear infections, because people, you have to speak in the language that people understand. Yeah. But then it's like, well, here's number one remedy, and the way this presents. So like arsenicum, number one remedy for COVID will be, you feel restless, you feel anxious, you might be fear of death, you might have vomiting, diarrhea, and you might be thirsty for small sips. As where number two remedy will be gelsenium, which is, you feel really tired, you can't, you've got chills up and down the spine. And it's quite different then again from maybe the third remedy, bryonia, which is where we say it's like a bear with a sore head, and they have dry symptoms. So, and they're really thirsty, they're kind of drinking gulp. So there's it's always treating the individual. That is like the most fundamental basis of homeopathy, and why it takes that little bit more work, because it's not like we've got no shortcuts as such to go, oh, I've got this named ailment, what remedy shall I take? It's like, well, actually, I'm going to have to look at how you present with those symptoms. I mean, there are some very universal ones, like arnica, universal trauma remedy, really the number one for accidents and for injuries. So that is the one that everyone should take with them. I've got one in the glove box, well, actually in the front of my car, where, God forbid, if there's ever an accident, I can reach it, because that's the remedy that if you need it, you really need it. And it's the universe. So, there are some remedies that are more universal, but even still, it's got to match. So yeah, I hope that answered. Basically, it's just homeopathy, individuality. That is like one of the core fundamental basic 101 principles of homeopathy. It's always individual.
It's well said, and it emphasizes for me practice that I've spoken about before on the podcast that I learned in a virtual men's group I was a part of, that was rooted largely in the principles of Rudolf Steiner around self-mastery. And one of the practices that we engaged in was the practice of equanimity, which, people may be familiar with that word. More importantly, as a spiritual and emotional practice, is that, and this can come off sort of strange to some people, but no matter what emotion you're experiencing, or whatever reaction, response, whatever you want to call it, in any given moment, as much as you can be conscious of it, the first step would be to name that emotion. And that can be a sticky wicket for some people. I mean, you may not know the difference between happiness, joy, contentment, titillation, elation. Like there's so many different shades of it. And then what you step into next is, what is the antithesis of this? What is the exact opposite? I mean, what is the exact opposite of feeling peaceful? I mean, could be half a dozen things depending on your experience. And then you realize that equanimity is, if not the median point in between, it could be all the space in between. And one of the take homes of that, of course, is the realization that whatever I'm experiencing, it's not due to an external cause. It's not that Lisa said something that harmed my ego. It's not that my wife said something that made me feel defensive. It's not a victimization occurrence. It's something that is organically happening within me. And so, I mean, to quote Dr. Harvey Bigelson and the Bigelson brothers, to say that as health is a process, disease is a process, and to take an accounting of symptoms instead of, I would say a diagnosis or a labeling would be a finish line. I mean,
exactly.
And that can be for some people, my heart just goes out to the people who have been given a lifelong diagnosis. That's about it. The book being "Doctors Are More Harmful Than Germs." That's about as harmful as it gets to proclaim, especially if someone is trusting you as a bona fide expert, a physician, someone who has taken an oath to treat and to do no harm. I know a lot of people speak about that, but it really does dawn on me the profundity of how damaging that can be. Because what you're combating, Lisa, as a homeopathic practitioner and educator, is to keep people from what can be the very depths of despair, when I'm very committed to language upgrades, and I realize that anything that comes after I am, first of all, there's a spiritual tradition. Most of them recognize that I am is another moniker for God, and so anything that comes after that better be supportive of life and vitality. And if and then Jacob and I talked about this as well, whether it's viruses or anything else, to say I have is possession. To say that you are now possessed by, not as a religious thing, but an entity, a demon, anything like that, to say nothing of a disease, just disempowering to say I have Crohn's, I have chronic arthritis, and thankfully the likes of Dr. Tom Cowan say, no, what you have is a story. And
Absolutely. Sorry to interrupt, but you are
Please.
absolutely on it there. So I love Tom Cowan. I think he does use homeopathy, but right. So everything is well, everything is energy. Energy comes first before the physical. So that is, once we've got to physical pathology, things have got very, very deep and way off from where the original disturbance started. And like, we can simplify things because sometimes it is due to toxicity, like that there is toxicity, sometimes that is why we have got sick. But let's just say, for a lot of people, there is always something that happens. And that's what, as a homeopath, when we're taking someone's case, actually, when you started off, you basically described the very first opening sentences. You were describing the homeopathic consultation. So you want to know everything about that person. You want to know about their history from their parents, their ancestry. You want to know about what the mother's pregnancy was like with them. You want to know about what they dream about. You want to know about like what temperature preferences they have, food desires. Actually, your physical.
Fun. It's so fun to get into all that.
And the physical thing that you've come about is of actually very little interest in many ways. And so what we want to know as homeopaths, after we've done the case, we'll look at the timeline. Some homeopaths will do it with the individual, some will get the individual to do it before and talk through it, or some will do it after. But you build up the timeline as when were there traumatic events? And there is always, I'm telling you, like, always there is something that happened, and quite often we can't see that connection, but there will be some trigger. Nothing comes out of the blue. It's normally, like, I've seen it hundreds, like, always. So you'll see someone that has chronic, say, UTIs or cystitis or bladder issues, and then you'll look back and actually, when did it start? Maybe they experienced some awful sexual abuse a few months prior to that. And there are big remedies, homeopathic remedies. We have some which are have an affinity to cystitis or urinary issues after sexual abuse, and this where anger's been suppressed and people are literally pissed off and they can't express it, and they'll get these physical symptoms. And you'll find, like, in that particular sort of scenario, you give this particular remedy, their physical symptoms will resolve, but they'll have this outpouring of like needing to address what couldn't be addressed previously. So there's always something. And even with, like, when you're self-treating acute issues and everyday issues, that's what we want to know with finding the homeopathic remedy. What happened before you got sick? Like, we're not used to, like, doctors would never ask, like conventional doctors would never ask you this. Like, were you out in a cold wind the day before? That can be quite aconite. Were you, like, children that have got wet feet might go into pulsatile state. So the amount of times I see children with big, thick green snot or catarrh or like deep chesty coughs, and I'll say, oh, what was happening, the day before? And the parents will be like, oh, they were playing outside in the rain and their feet got wet. That's actually one of the keynotes of pulsatilla, and it sounds crazy, but we find that these remedies have these sort of etiologies attached to them. And that sort of ties into the German new medicine side as well as, what was going on around the time or before someone got sick. So yeah, there's always a story. And that is such an important part of homeopathy. And I think sometimes why people don't find the right remedy or it doesn't seem to work is because you just haven't perhaps been able to find that connection, or, aren't aware of it, is to help, find the remedy that's going to shift that state.
Yeah. Or you have a story that you and your ego prefer that keeps you afloat instead of having to maybe go into a wound. And I love giving credit where it's due, especially because of my role. I mean, I'm creating more through the podcast, through these conversations. I really do like to curate. I like to connect people with interviews, podcasts, books, documentaries, whatever, and especially people who I think are they've earned, in the truest sense, my admiration, respect, and support. And Alex Zek would be one, especially because of his commitment to speaking about entering into the upset, being able to really visit these things that are painful in our life, which we can numb and distract from and be caught up in. I mean, there's always things to do there's literally, unfortunately now, always something you can be doing. And I fall into that too, and I am doing a better job at checking myself of like, okay, in my downtime when I'm cooking or just out in the yard, like, do I always have a podcast in my ear? Do I always have something going on, or would is this a good time to sort of unplug a little bit and just get curious? I mean, that curiosity of what part of my story is keeping me from leveling up. Doing some recent work with my wife, especially the language upgrades around limiting beliefs.
Mm.
For someone to say, "I want to heal," that verb that we conflate with desire, want, just
Mm.
emphasizes the lack. It is
Mm.
just saying the want. And it usually just requires more active language of I am seeking, I am committed to, I am devoted to. Something bringing you into the action. Like I said, with the disease paradigms, there's so much of that around that. To say nothing of the stories of killer T cells and immune system defense, and beating disease, beating cancer, fuck cancer, and like, oh, it's so pugilistic. It's so antagonistic, and yet, with that in mind, with that critique in mind, is in your estimation, is homeopathy more committed to harmony, to bringing about this again? Water seeks its level. Water is always trying to purify, and that's usually where we do need to bring in some level of detox. Where does harmony play a factor, like you said, with tuning? I mean, what would you say about how best we can understand our practice of tuning ourselves?
Well, homeopathy is all it's ever doing is seeking homeostasis. It is getting the body to return to balance. And this is why even remedies can have a polarity to them.
Mm.
So, because people are like, well, how can that remedy be really good? Okay, take I'm thinking something that just popped into my head. Medarinum, particular remedy, it can have this side where people that need it can have a trait where they're really cruel to animals, or they have this severe love, like extreme love for
Interesting.
animals. And all these remedies generally have this polarity to them. So the same, like I shared recently about, which remedy was it? Cortisol, and actually homeopathic cortisol. Now, this is a bit more like a therapeutic. It's one of the
Yeah.
newer remedies. It's where we are treating more like on a therapeutic basis. But if someone is extremely stressed or has high cortisol levels, or potentially too low, I don't think there's many, it will balance it out. So someone said to me, oh, but if I take the cortisol as a homeopathic remedy and my cortisol's too high, surely it's giving me more. And I was like, no, it's not working like that, because it's actually just seeking balance. It's seeking to rebalance the body. So a lot of these remedies have this polarity to them and can be used for, like dopamine. You can use it if the dopamine levels are too high, or if it's too low. So yeah, it's all about the very fundamental basis is about seeking balance and rebalancing the body. That is what homeopathy is doing.
I think that might be another aspect that is simple and yet not easy as most people think about it, because yeah, and that is highly individual. Balance on a, whether it's a seesaw or anything else, is not always like this. At least not all year long, at least not all lifelong, right? I mean, the seasonality aspect has been something I've really been tuning into. Take the movement piece, the training piece. It's, in summer I'm playing tennis 3, 4, 5 days a week if I can.
Mm.
It's winter, I play maybe twice a week indoors. Totally different element. The sweating is way different. I mean, I wonder about that too. I know how much people talk about how essential it is to still sweat and move in the wintertime. And I'm all for that. And yet, northern latitude, it's just not as available as it is
Mm.
the rest of the year. You still need some heat, but I think a relationship with the cold is good. All this to say, to bring it full circle, to have a more zoomed out, I mean, yeah, what is my diet, my practices, my movement schedule look like over the course of a year? Certainly not thinking I'm going to do the same thing all year long,
Yeah.
all life long, because yeah, I mean, too much movement, too little movement, both can be bad. Too much of one food, not enough of the food, can be bad. Too much thinking, not enough thinking. Those and there's so much space in between. There's so much space in between, and that strikes me as highly individual. Some people do need to think more. Some people are way too emotional and reactive. And some people definitely need to think less. I'm in love with a Virgo. She loves to overthink. She's devoted to thinking a lot. And thankfully I'm rooted, and she is seeing the truth in the tenet that Paul Chek puts out of are you laughing? You're not a Virgo too, are you?
Yes, this is why I love homeopathy so much, because there's thousands of remedies to go away and analyze and
So this was my first introduction to tissue salts, which I have only spoken a little bit about. Have you explored this and its depths, the zodiac and the salts?
I tell you what, Steve Faulkner was on my podcast a few episodes ago, and he deep dived into the zodiac. And I have to say, I had always, I'm going to hold my hands up here and make a confession. So at the end of COVID, I was homeopathy was one of the last, talks, and it was all the really interesting stuff, acoustic, like all the energy stuff. And then the very last episode was on tissue salts. And I was like, what? What? Tissue salts? Like, seriously? Because the way we're taught it at homeopathy school is they're pretty boring, actually. They're like a cross between homeopathy and a supplement. They can do great things, but they haven't got the depths of like homeopathic remedies. So I was really stunned. And then I listened to the episode and I was like, okay, I have a whole nother level of appreciation of tissue salts, and the way Steve Faulkner talks about the zodiac, and like, it's not like, because you can think, oh, it's tied to my personality and my star sign. And he talks about, no, the zodiac is just really a reference to where the stars are and, in the sky, what rays, what kind of radiation we would have had from the sunlight, and whether we would have, during those 9 months of gestation, by pinpointing them to that particular time of year, whether we would have absorbed enough tissue salts. And I was like, now I get it, So I had a whole level of different level of appreciation after listening to that last episode of the end of COVID. And Steve, he really, that episode that he was on my podcast, the homeopaths were loving it, because a lot of homeopaths haven't actually been taught to have this really in-depth appreciation for tissue salts, and he just explains it and makes people understand that connection with the zodiac. So love it.
Good. Well, I think you two are a great team. You've put out between the two of you and your various podcasts, a couple hours of content, right? I mean, you've been on his show, he's been on yours.
Oh wait, so he released the one. So the one he released on his was for mine. So, but it was very long. It was over 3 hours. I tried to make it short
and worth it.
Well,
and this has been, my education has taken place every day since university, basically, is because I follow all of these things that I don't second guess, because I'm just headlong into them. And I am, as a seeker, I'm looking for as many threads that are weaving the tapestry of our life. And so anything that is related to, I think I've only mentioned it once, but George Washington Carey and Inez E. Perry are the authors. Different times, Inez Perry continued George Washington Carey's work, but the exposition in this book, The Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation, goes through the arc of starting with Aries, the first sign in the zodiac, which is why people would say that the new year is yet to commence, because that is really, and I'm holding space for a little bit of a blend, and I get this from Steiner as well, is that the winter solstice and then Christmas season going into not necessarily January 1, but even if you take the winter solstice in the third week in December, that does mark the return to longer days. Now we do start that arc again toward the spring. So you could say that there is a newness that comes from that. I'm having a different relationship with the four significant times of the year, the equinoxes and the solstices. Even though it's called the summer solstice, it does sort of mark an end, and now we're heading into a new season. So but that said, starting with I believe it's the cerebrum and then cerebral spinal fluid, basically going from head to toes, finishing with Pisces and the feet, fish feet. There's so many interesting overlaps there, but the thread, and there's plenty of biblical references. I mean, it's chock full of that mythology. I mean, all of which is related to astrology. And I mean, one great point that Steve made that I've heard him speak about, with you talked about 9 months of gestation. Arguably, we are all premature babies because we don't have, and that's why some of us may present with certain symptoms. Is that from conception to birth? It's, give or take 9 months. Although I interviewed a woman who was 10 months pregnant on the podcast and happy as can be, and gave birth shortly afterward, and everyone's all happy and healthy. So there's a range there for sure. I mean, thankfully there's a lot of growing awareness around what really is a healthy pregnancy, a healthy birth, and I'm also trying to open the portals on that, because I mean, I think in the States, Lisa, there is a medical requirement. I mean, if you're seeing a doctor, if you're seeing an OBGYN, anyone, and again, this gets into licenses and insurance and this whole apparatus that is about, liability, money,
Mm.
who can sue whom, and all that kind of stuff. But I think beyond 9 months and a couple of weeks, you're forced to induce the baby. There's no such thing as just letting a natural pregnancy occur. So, but to Steve's point, since it's 9 months and not 12 of gestation, those 3 months where you were not a seed and then you were not, a full term baby, that's when people may be liable to present with certain symptoms registering in that part of the body. And that's been fascinating for me
Mm.
to explore. And as a coach, I mean, I do have an interest in getting more into astrology, because if you asked someone for their date, time, and place of birth and included that as part of a questionnaire, I mean, you may be able to hone in quickly on some things that are patterns in their life. Is there so? I'd be curious about questionnaires that you use, or if there are any hallmark questions that you ask that can reveal a lot to you about a person. If they're proprietary, you don't have to share any, or if they're just kind of universal. I'd be curious what those things are that you do try to, to make sure that you have as clear a picture of who's sitting across from you as you can, because we know that's not easy. I mean, especially with questionnaires, people like to say, "Oh, you ask anyone, Lisa, right?" Just even in passing, the Brit,
Mm.
you Brits are perennially polite, but just to say, because I'm the sort of person who I say, "How are you doing?" I am asking. I do want, especially with my loved ones. I mean, it's not like, how's it. I never say how's it going. I mean, you can also say it's not going great, and then I will say why, and let me put away my stuff and really give you my 2 ears and my full heart of attention. But uh, what sort of tactics do you use to, you know clear away some of the bullshit so that you can start to help people really get healthy?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I did use a questionnaire before I saw patients, but a lot of homeopaths won't use a questionnaire. Actually, it's a real split. Some
Yeah.
homeopaths will say they actually don't want, to hear anything before. They just want that space
Yeah.
to see what the energy's like. For me personally, I kind of took a bit of a hybrid approach in that I wanted some core information, obviously date of birth, but medical history and often family history, because quite often in the consultation, the thing will come up like where the energy is at, where's the party at, what is going on, like, you don't suddenly want to have to cut it short, because actually you also really do want to know about their, family history, because that can give you a hint as to what miasmatic remedies, we call
Mm-hmm.
it miasms, which is inherited tendencies. You want to know about that, and perhaps you want to know about life events, or what happened in their history, in the medical history. You don't, like, for me, I don't want to then stop the flow of, actually, God, we're going to run over, I haven't got that information, and I
Yeah.
actually want to. So for me, I always like to get some of the just basics. I have to say, if I have my practice now, I would be looking, and I think I would recommend this to many practitioners, is you would want to look up their star sign, their date of birth, and see what tissue sort corresponds to that and what area, because that's going to give you so much insight. And since becoming more on board with the idea, I've actually got my whole family on the tissue sorts for
Oh
their
yeah.
particular star sign. Yeah, it's spot on. Like, what health issues? So Virgos are Kali Sulf, which is all about skin, normally skin and bowels, but like my issues are always skin related. That's like my susceptibility. You know, my daughter, she's Taurus, and she really suffers with the change of seasons and dampness. She's really affected by when we go into autumn. She tends to get ill then, and that's Nat Sulf. My husband's Libra, and he's that's Nat Phos, which is all about acidity, and definitely fits with his. So, you know, it's almost like I've gone through like my wider family. I'm like, this is crazy, actually, how accurate these are. So yeah, I would really recommend. And here
Yeah,
we
I
are.
I think this is pretty visible. I forget where I pulled this from. I'll give credit in the show notes when I find it. And this isn't the I mean, Steve's got some great content as well that I will track down. Uh let's use this as a segue, Lisa, if you please. I've given it the old college try to describe tissue salts, and I've done my very best to not make it sound like a supplement, because I think where I've landed with supplements, I mean, I not trying to be a purist or anything like that. It's just and I get it, we do not have the most nutrient bioavailable food for the most part, especially if it's at the grocery store. It's different than, you know, you go to your local farm and it's infused with the energetics of your area, hopefully some love and some generational care and all of that. So there's plenty to be said there. Uh, there are some things that we do need to supplement. So the categories that I've grouped supplements into are performance. So as an athlete, you may want some creatine, you may want some aminos, you may want some X, Y, and Z to enhance performance or recovery. Granted, I can see a lot of, you know, tissue salts and homeopathy replacing a lot of that. Emergency, same deal. I mean, I think one of the only emergency supplements I take would be activated charcoal. You know, you go out to eat, maybe something doesn't really sit well, like it's good for an upset stomach, you know, kind of a blood cleanser, something like that. And then dietary, but I don't take a vitamin C. I don't take a vitamin whatever. It doesn't make sense to me anymore, because instead what I'm focused on are energetics and the things that really sustain me. I've done my best to disqualify tissue salts from the supplement conversation. And yet, like you said, sort of how they're presented out there is, you know, they may masquerade a little bit as supplements, because you say, if I have a deficiency or if I have a certain presentation of symptoms, and I can refer to Lisa's book, which I have mentioned before, which we're going to maybe reference a little bit here as a bit of an exercise. For yours truly, for instance, I am also a Taurus. April 21st is my date of birth. And I think one of the last pages, yeah, I turned right to it here, is Lisa does have a reference to the zodiacal sign and the significance of what that might mean as a Taurus. So, however, so since I came through that term, Lisa's going to grab her copy so we can
I
do
just think
two.
that's a mistake on there, because it says April
Oh,
the 22nd, and
oh
April
yeah. So
21st is definitely
I,
Taurus.
I'm with you too. I had a wonderful woman on by the name of Danny Katz, who's actually, I know she's affiliated with a lot of the same crew that Alec is, and I asked her about cusps, because I mean, depending on where you look, the dates can be a day or two or three off, and she said they're bullshit. You know, if you go to I think I use Astro Theme or whatever, but I think April 21, even though it's right there on the line. I mean, it's not like I'm a or a 1 degree Taurus. I'm a fifth degree, so I'm pretty ensconced in that sign. So I'm with
Well,
you.
my,
I like.
my sister is April the 21st, and
Uh,
she's definitely Taurus. Like, and that's
okay.
why I wouldn't have twigged on that otherwise. So I'm like, no,
Yeah.
April 21st is definitely Taurus. Well, in my
So
view, because yeah.
so if you'll indulge me, not just for my own benefit, but just because I mean we can do you instead, but you can. I think this is good homework for people. This is a worthwhile practice, which doesn't require much more. I mean, I'll say one quick word for astrology when people say, you know, what possible bearing could that have on my life, especially the day I was born? I've lived 30 years since, you know, all these things have happened. It has nothing to do with the stars. Well, uh, so many of our schedules, calendars, food, activities, holidays, you name it, are dictated by one very well known, very popular star known as the sun. And I mean,
Mm.
I think it's something that I don't think it's just a star. I think it's something much deeper and profound than that. However, sun, moon, whatever I mean, there's plenty of agricultural validity to doing things by the moon cycles as well. Of course, what most women experience if they have a monthly cycle, some of these things are undeniable. Now, people don't know that Saturn has to do with your relationship with your father, and Mercury is your mindset, and Venus is what you're drawn to for love, and all these things, which I think are just some beautiful archetypal stories that are worth engaging in. All this to say, if you A, accept that, and then B, you're entertaining that, okay, there are these compounds, and you can help me with the verbiage there, known as tissue salts, that have a relationship here with my body, with these seasons, with these astrological patterns, where the sun and moon are, because I've seen some interesting work as well of taking tissue salts, based on not only what sun season we're in, but also closer to the full moon, where the moon is what sign the moon is inhabiting at certain times, and what that might mean for the body. So, but to use this example, if we're going through it for tomfoolery here. So since I was born April 21, my deficiencies would be, so this is actually a question I have. Would I be deficient in the rest of Taurus and then Gemini Cancer, or would I just be Gemini Cancer Leo? What's your understanding of that,
So
Lisa?
actually, Steve discusses
Mhm.
this on my podcast, and I can't remember exactly because it does depend on where. But
Yeah,
generally it's your star sign, so it'd be Taurus that you'd generally be deficient in, particularly as you're born at the start. I think
right.
I've got that right.
Yep.
And then Gemini and Cancer. So yeah, you need to look at where in the cusp you are born. But
Mhm.
it is like, for me, it's crazy accurate. I don't know if you feel that Nat Self relates to you as a remedy. Like, you see areas that you are like, oh yeah, I can see why I might need that. Like for my
The
daughter that's Taurus, without a doubt, like she needs Nat
Yeah.
Self.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, the liver stuff I can see just the more I learn about the liver. Certainly some history of alcohol abuse in my family, and I mean, I think that's part of it. And I've recently done some interesting investigation on the significance of the throat chakra, and I certainly love using my voice as for
Mm.
what I do here. And yet I also recognize some of the blockages, issues that come up there, where I'm necessarily not always speaking what I believe to be true, and what I would like to make clear to myself as well as to other people. And then on down, I can absolutely see, I mean, all the fibers and tissues. So part of the reason why I've developed an affinity for research into fascia is that the prevailing messaging around anything that wasn't a traumatic injury. If you're playing rugby and someone snaps your leg in half, on a ruck, then like, okay, I think we know what happened there. But the especially for footballers, both on your side of the Atlantic and ours, so many non-contact soft tissue injuries are happening. And we can talk about the turf and the grass. I mean, there's training for sure, but yeah, the line used to be all of those injuries are soft tissue injuries, and now the literal deeper layer to that would be all injuries are fascial adhesions or inhibitions, and so much of the evolving understanding of fascia brings in traditional Chinese medicine and understanding of the chakra systems, because there is an energy blockage. And so much of it also has to do with water, because
Mm.
it is a certain fibrous substance. There's relationship with, yeah, not only the physical water in your body, the electrical charge, the blood as well. And these things that we think are knots, or, I just have a hip that I need to stretch, and things like that, are really just the fact that energy is not getting there. And I learned so
Mm.
much about that through German New Medicine as well. And this is where I'm still trying to weave in all of these threads, because there are so many levels to it. But my
There really are.
recent, oh yeah, and I'll kick it back to you once I finish my train here. My recent experience with a lumbar disc slip just sent me into, the first level was physical, of course. I was on the tennis court. I was doing some demonstrations of movements that I don't think are healthful. I was showing someone what I was talking about. And then and it was a very strenuous single session where it's not like a match where, you take some water after every 2 games and sit and rest. Like, no, we were just going for 90 minutes. And so I started the physical, and then I got into, okay, well, what does this part of my body signify? And it was root chakra, security, the disc slip to the left side. That's the feminine side, some relationship with my mother, some things she and I were working out. And one of the places I landed, which you alluded to earlier, and I'd like to think we can tie this in, is from the German medicine philosophy of the repair cycle, is that depending on certain symptoms and experiences, that when those come up, it does signify a completion of a cycle, possibly a lesson learned, possibly this is the last ditch effort to get these things out, maybe a shift. I mean, with the spine and of course the chakra system, things can get a little bit complicated there. But I bring that up as a story whenever I talk about my, and that was a significant one in the last several years. But the last time that happened, where I had that exact injury, similar things were going on in my life. Issues around money, work, family, feeling secure, definitely some feminine energy blockages and things like that. And I mean, after that injury this time, I was back on the tennis court in 2.5 weeks because, and this is one last thing that I'll mention and then kick it to you to talk about tissue salts, is that, I mean, day to day, I'm drinking my spring water and I'm eating and I'm moving and I'm doing very simple things. I'm not peppering myself with a bunch of supplements, take my tissue salts when things come up. But when something significant like that happens, a spinal injury, especially low spine, is about as serious as it gets, then I go to my arsenal. I'm lying half naked on the ground at solar noon. I'm praying. I'm doing Sonic Sunday tunings with Eileen McCusick. I'm picking certain music. I'm eating certain foods. I'm picking the soft tissue salts that are going to aid me, charging my water, all of the things. I don't do them every single day. I think they would probably lose their significance and their potency in my life. But I think if there's a question here, Lisa, it's for you to sort of speak to how and why we develop our arsenal, not out of fear and like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get sick and like, I need to take something every single day. Like I said, from my experiences, is that preparation. Novak Djokovic has popularized the saying, if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. And I think this is where having a 12, I mean, thankfully with tissue salts, there's only 12, plus or minus. I know people have different versions of that, but homeopathy, there's 8,000 bloody remedies. So this might be a good place to start. So I'm going to drink some water. I've been talking for a while. Thank you for being a good listener. You take it wherever you want from all of that.
No, I think we've raised some like really, really, really valuable points. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because can the majority of people prepare, or do they actually have to have something bad happen? Like for me, I had to have like that rock bottom, oh my God, my child getting sick, to the point of like, I'll do anything to make this better. So like, I hope that many people aren't like me, that they can change before like it takes something of big, enormous magnitude to make someone try and prepare. But with the in terms of, there's a few things actually I want to pick up on. One, a book was screaming to my head as you were talking about this, particularly circling back to you were talking about athletes. There is a book written by the homeopath Asa Hershaw, I think I pronounced his name right. I think it's called Healing the Musculoskeletal System, and it's got remedies purely for, the whole musculoskeletal system and injuries. And, it goes into a massive load of detail. I haven't got the book myself, but I know it's meant to be really good. It just hasn't. In fact, I will have to get it because, it's like my pile of books.
Yeah,
I need a whole new study. But so that's one book.
And real quick, do you recall the author's name of that?
It's Asa Hershaw, ASA is his first name, and Hershaw, HERSHOFF.
Great,
I think I pronounced that right. So that'd be one. Then in terms of the actual homeopathy kits to prepare, like get a small kit. Every single person should get a small kit. Even if you don't get a small kit, get 2 remedies like aconite and arnica. I share on my homeopathy page all the time on Instagram what remedies, like start with these 5 remedies. I've got a free guide on my website with FAQs and the top 11 remedies. So even if you just bought those, you know, a tube of remedies which will last you years is like $5. But you can get a homeopathy kit for around $50, you know, a small one.
Yeah.
I have a company in the UK that ship internationally that have made a starter kit that I've designed that's got 25 remedies. So just start. I mean, that's the mega kit. That's huge.
Okay.
But thank you for bringing that. That's 90 remedies.
Yep.
But the starter kit, which is just
Oh,
25 remedies,
there
is
we are.
tiny. And it's so, but even if you don't, you know, don't get mine, if you're not in the, if you're, you know, outside of the UK and you think, actually, I want to get something locally, you can get a Helios kit, which is 18 remedies. They're sold. You do need to register at the moment, but that's fine. You can easily do that. And Helios sell on Amazon.com, so you can even buy a kit from Amazon for around, I don't know what they are, maybe like $40 with 18 remedies. So, and they come with little booklets. My one comes with a free ebook, but you can get the ebook off my website, the free one. So just get a kit so that you've got it, so that, you know, if you have an injury, you can take arnica, probably the one that you'll need, but then there's like Rustox and Ruta, which are the other core injury remedies. And yeah, just have it, because yeah, if every home had a homeopathy kit and knew how to use it, society's mental and physical health would be transformed. Because, you know, I heard this from amazing homeopath, Ian Watson, who was on my podcast, who was quoting the great late Robin Murphy, who is the guy that wrote all of our Materia Medicas and repertories. And he said, you homeopaths, you think it's all this fancy constitutional, and I'm slightly paraphrasing this, but you think it's all this fancy miasms and constitutional remedies. And he said, no, it's not. He said the highest form of homeopathy is first aid prescribing. And he said, because if you think back, what are we trained to do as homeopaths? We're trained to see, where did it all begin? It began as a shock, as an accident, as a vaccination that went wrong. And if in that very moment we'd had a homeopathy kit and we knew which remedy to give for that particular first aid situation or that shock, that whole chain of events would never have then happened. So that is why, you know, we've talked in depth, you know, we've gone off into like the more in-depth aspects of homeopathy and working with homeopaths. But actually, if you get a kit and you use it for these issues as they arise, and then get your tissue salts. So I think tissue salts easy, because Dr. Schuessler, who discovered the tissue salts, discovered that when the human body returns to ashes, there remain only 12 minerals that are left, and they are the 12 tissue salts. And they are much, you know, they're much less overwhelming place to start, and they are, you know, you can combine them. That you can't really go wrong with the tissue salts.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that might be one of their more attractive qualities, is there's no I can't think of the medical term, but really no threat of ill effect, right? Or like no big visceral effect. Well, what about in homeopathy? I mean, is one of the hallmarks of homeopathy that it will produce maybe, I don't know, an intensification of symptoms, perhaps? Is there a potential for that?
So really good question. So with homeopathy, we always want to take the minimum dose. So when, I can't remember, did I talk about Hahnemann, how he discovered homeopathy in the first place?
Let's give him some flowers.
Yeah,
I think.
okay, let's go right.
Yeah.
So he basically, so he was a medical translator. He was a doctor, but he'd got really disillusioned with all the medical practice at the time. He was a medical translator, and he was learning and translating about Peruvian bark, and how it was a good treatment for malaria, and how it said, you know, it cures all of these issues that someone has when they have malaria symptoms. And we're not quite sure why, but he decided to take it and realized that if he took it when he was healthy, he got the symptoms of malaria. So he wanted to try, he thought, that's interesting. If I'm healthy, I get the symptoms, but if someone's sick, it cures them. And he was like, I wonder if there's a way to like make the actual original plant medicine less toxic. So he started diluting it and succussing it, which is shaking to release the energy. And he realized that if he did that, it still actually it worked better for the individual that had those symptoms, but it didn't produce any toxic side effects at all. And so that's how he discovered it. And he started experimenting with all sorts of substances. So Peruvian bark is the homeopathic remedy china, but we've got arsenicum made out of arsenic. We've got lachesis made out of snakes. We've got arnica made out of mountain daisy. We've got tarantula made out of tarantula. We've got literally remedies made out of everything. And the way that we actually discover what these remedies will cure. So these days I've participated in, we call them provings, but healthy volunteers will take the homeopathic remedy and we will see, what does it like create in us in a healthy state if we take this remedy when we don't need it. And then provers will make a note of their dreams, food cravings, emotions, like what physical stuff might come up. And then that's all documented and compiled into Materia Medica, which basically then contains the remedy and all like the keynotes and symptoms of that remedy.
Oh my gosh, so, Lisa, that sounds like science. No way. Oh my goodness.
There is. Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah, exactly. There is some. So there is organization, and there's a organized basis behind this. But if we keep taking a remedy when we don't need it, it won't do any harm, but we risk proving it. So we risk that we might start to get the symptoms that it's actually meant to. Now, many homeopaths will say, I've never seen this happen. Like, no, it doesn't happen. It's really unlikely to happen. As someone that's really sensitive, maybe this is why I've taken on this, my calling is to teach homeopathy in the home. I'm really reserved about how often we should repeat remedies and what potencies we should use, because I have proved remedies in the past myself when I've taken maybe only 3 doses. Like my homeopath that I used to see, he would never tell me what he was giving me, and after the 3rd time I took a remedy that he prescribed me, I was like, I'm really irritable. Everything's annoying me. I was like, I feel really I don't feel good on this remedy. I had all these physical, I had some physical issues come up that weren't they weren't stuff I've had in the past. It wasn't return of old symptoms. And I went back and he's like, how are you doing? And I was like, oh, everything's annoying me. He's like, what? I'm like, the noise of my kids, everything. And then I said, what remedy have I had? And he was like, Nox vomica. And I was like, now that makes sense, because Nox vomica is the hangover, the type A personality remedy, the overworker, the city worker, someone that's quite constipated, someone that needs alcohol and coffee. And I'd embodied that state and I felt horrible. And I'd only taken 3 doses in a 200C, which you can even get in some kits. I always recommend a kit in a 30C because it doesn't hit that emotional level so much. So I think for me, I'm always much more cautious about teaching people, look, less is more. You just take what you need. Don't keep taking it, because if you keep taking it, there's it will stop as soon as you stop taking the remedy. It will stop, and it's not going to give you physical pathology or anything, but it's going to stir. Imagine, in fact, this is what I did a blog on this. I don't know if it's still on Substack, but I did the blog. Did you ever watch The Walking Dead?
I did not.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a scene where Daryl, who I love his character, he's tortured, and he has the song Easy Street going on again and again and again. And the song almost makes them go mad. And it is horrible because it's such a ridiculously happy, stupid, jovial song, but the most horrible torture. So it's imagine listening to some really horrible, aggressive song that you don't need in that particular moment. It can start to stir things up.
Yeah.
It can start to make you feel what that song is about. And you're not needing to listen to that song right now because you weren't in that. Actually, if you think about listening to Fleetwood Mac, Go Your Own, your own.
Yeah.
If you listen to that again and again and again on really high volume, you might start to think about all those assholes in the past that had really pissed you off.
Yeah.
Even, and that's kind of what taking a remedy, I think, too frequently when you don't need it can do. So it's not damaging, but it's just, perhaps aggravating a little bit.
Yeah.
So tissue salts aren't like that. Tissue salts, because they're more like a hybrid. Although having said that, they are still so diluted. They are not like they do contain a material dose, but their action is not working based on the material dose that's in there. It's minute. But you can take them long term. You know, you can take them like for a few months, and you do actually have to take them, you know, a couple of times a day for like a few, you know, for generally weeks to months at a time. Some homeopaths practitioners will say take 2 days off a week so you don't risk proving. But yeah, they're just different. They're much easier place to start. But I don't think you see, personally, you can see wow impacts. Like my husband's cavity was resolved taking Calfleur and Calphos for a couple of months. But you don't have those like, wow, what you take one dose and something like miraculous happens that can sometimes happen with homeopathy. So they're just that bit different.
They're still dynamic tools. I was going to say weapons, but that's not really what we're about. No, there are tools, they're building blocks, and you know, to build anything, you need a whole array of tools. And so to have, you know, the very potent and numerous ones of homeopathy would be a tremendous advantage to someone. And then the tissue salts again because yeah, I mean, something you may just need a little boost to help. You know, well, first of all, the less is more principle is, I see, especially being surrounded by many type A's and in the tennis world, people who, because of their fervent passion for tennis, are so key, any sport, to get back out there. And I find this so much on the rehab, physical therapy side, is like, if my P tells me to do 100 hamstring curls, I'm going to do 200. And I
They
say,
probably all
well,
need some Nux Vomit.
yeah, I'm
Like,
well, shoot. Okay, so that's fascinating too, because yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to delve into your book and sort of get that profile, because I'm how you just described the embodiment of the energy of the personae of a homeopathic like that you proved, and yeah, just to see yourself change. I mean, there's so many. We don't have nearly the time, and you know, I know the sun has long been down in your part of the world, so we'll land the plane here soon a little bit. We don't have nearly the time to talk about all of the ways where literally I think about songs all the time, Lisa. I mean, someone described it to me as a flirt. Anything that happens, if it's a pebble that you step on, a memory you recall, but songs especially, because sometimes I wake up in the morning singing a song I haven't thought of in years, and some of that programming is a little odd. Sometimes it's great, and you know, sometimes, I mean, I'm deeply in love. Sometimes a breakup song just hits the spot. You know, sometimes it's just fun. However, I can definitely see. I mean, I remember this with TV shows. Did you ever hear of the show Ray Donovan? That was a it was about,
I have
so
heard of it, but I haven't ever seen it, and I don't know what I don't know why I've heard of it.
it's
So
about as
yeah,
dark as it gets. I mean, but it's not dissimilar to The Sopranos, or I
okay.
mean, really any of the most popular shows, especially for men. Mad Men is another great show that comes to mind. I don't think we realize. I mean, people talk about this all the time, but the programming that we come to embody, if these are things that you know, it's one thing to say, I find this show very entertaining, very compelling, visually very well done, and then we still have to have our defense system. This is the real immune system, is protecting against programming like that, because then we do start to embody it whether we realize it or not. Of course, the popular work now is I visit ways that I am unconsciously like my father, like my mother, you know, like other people that I've grown up around and thought I admired, and we have to do that work as well. Certainly the energetics and frequency of song. Of course, music nowadays is not made at a certain hertz level that is, you know, that good for us. There's that aspect, but yeah, I'm just fascinated by what you said about how we can start to embody the more we let things in. And this is why I talk about diet as capital D diet with all things that we consume, because we talk about consuming media, we talk about consuming podcasts, and if we aren't discerning, and if we don't have checks to say, is this really supporting a healthy, vital lifestyle? The truther community, I've been in those places of like, you know, if it's a couple of days where I'm just in the throes of what really happened on 9/11 and event 201, you know, take your pick. Uh, that is not a healthy place to be.
No,
And
it's not.
it's so true that, you know, where our attention goes, energy flows. And I am much more devoted to choosing the things that support a vital life for myself. Of course, things that support the wellness of my home. We'll land the plane with a couple of, they're not stock questions, I'm still workshopping them, but one place that I do like to start is things that you have changed or adapted in your home. You know, it's great that you have a pantry full of homeopathic kits, but anything else that you've done that you think has
Oh
really paid
God,
dividends? Take it away.
loads. Like when
Good,
you start
good.
changing like cookware
Yep.
to actually the thing that I've done that's probably been the biggest investment, like after researching water for so long, you know, I've got a Berkey and obviously looking at other, I actually get, it's quite extravagant, but I have decided I now get wholesale deliveries of spring water from my local
Yeah.
spring in glass bottles, and it's like local and it's got the most amazing mineral content. It's even got
Yeah.
naturally occurring silver, and
Oh,
it is yeah, it's amazing. And I thought that that's actually the biggest thing that I've done, which makes me feel the best, is the water,
yeah.
because yeah, that drinking, yeah, from the food that comes in to turning Wi-Fi off at night to having plants all over the house to
I was going to say anything particularly on the energetic front, because plants bring that, certainly shutting off the tap to non-native EMFs is, I mean, for 12 hours, I mean, yeah, on our best days, 8:30 p.m. to 8:30 a.m. the Wi-Fi's off. And there you go. I mean, that's 12 hours that we're
yeah.
not, but, and granted, you know, we're still in suburbia, there's stuff going on around, but at least for our four walls, that's helpful. So yeah, anything on the energetic front, any, yeah.
I actually have a it pulses out PEMF
Hmm.
frequencies, a mag Healy, which
Yeah, oh,
is
great.
yeah,
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 yeah.
so I have that, and I really like that. I find that that makes, you can set different programs. So I have one up, like, again, my money now goes into things that I, you know, years ago it would have been, I don't know, clothes or whatever. Now
Yeah.
it's these kind of contraptions, but you don't need these things. Well, actually, arguably I'd say like plants and things you do, but I have you can set different frequencies, so like I can have energy clearing, or
Mm.
you know, I love it. What else do I have? I'd say that's more on the energy front. There's probably loads actually, but just
There,
there's so
there,
much.
there are, and I'm working on a list to, yeah, and I don't quite know how. Not that I need to make money off of it. I mean, this is what I appreciate about the burgeoning wisdom and health economy is, I mean, sure, you put a price tag on your courses and your offerings and your books, and yet uh it's not really about making crazy product, because I mean, you could, yeah, there's schemes to make a ton of money. It's more about the reciprocity that comes from circulating your gift and your wisdom
Mm.
and your accrued knowledge and experience. And I so admire you for that. Is just the devotion you have, and I've come to really love that word, devotion. A
Mm.
woman I'll put on your radar because she's doing tremendous work. Her Instagram handle and her website is called Musical Breathwork, and
Okay, yeah.
she was a high level golfer and also trained as an opera singer, and she is
Mm.
blending the two worlds of breathwork and fascia. And she's very much interested in Masaru Emoto's work, Veda
Oh
Austin,
wow,
and
okay.
she's quickly picking up speed. She was on Alex's podcast, and yeah, I mean, doing work with that. She's also an advocate for it, as I am. Water is probably the
Mm.
best investment you can make, and I mean, I have a natural spring less than a mile up the road from my house, and I get the nice big glass jugs with the flower of life on it,
Oh,
because the
brilliant.
imprinting of water is so worth it. But like, just to put a lid on that, I don't know or necessarily care how I'll offer it, and yet I do want to offer, instead of spending $100,000 on a kitchen upgrade. Maybe you do want that, but how about $6,000 and you get a whole house water filtration that structures your water like we have from Greenfield, and upgrade your cookware and get a bunch of glass Tupperware, and you know, throw out the spray can oils and get some I mean, the pantry is such a great, and water
Mm.
storage and things like that. I think that's where, like, we shift, is we don't need, this is what I try to tell people is, like you said, you know, maybe before the money would have gone to clothes or
Mm.
gadgets or whatever. It's the same thing with buying high quality food, is that it's not like you now have to budget for high quality organic food and the Cheez-Its and the cereal. It's no, I mean, you've once you
Mm.
know better, you do better, and you can't even conceive of why would I use the energy exchange that is money. It is an energy exchange, whatever. I mean, is it worthless? Is it paper? Is it gold? Whatever. It's still something that
Mm.
you had to exert your energy and time and talents for to then go support your life. Not, I don't believe in earning a living. Life is what we have. So then you just become very discerning and very deliberate about where the money goes, and it doesn't stack. You don't try to prop up your old materialistic lifestyle and then try to be,
Yeah.
high quality resources. So I'm very much aligned with you there. I did give you a heads up, so you had an hour 40 minutes to think about this.
Oh,
You deny your athleticism, and yet you have your skill set in the mental fields for sure. What arena are you, if not competing in these days? Where are you testing yourself and your limits lately on the performance front?
I think it's homeopathy knowledge. Like
Cool.
literally, just I was thinking about the other day. In fact, it was response this morning. I've put a Q&A on my Instagram stories, and I haven't had chance to answer them all. I've been like inundated. But someone asked me, Lisa, what are your hobbies? And I thought,
Oh no.
God, it's just homeopathy. This is really sad. Like it consumes everything. Like because I love it so much. I genuinely, it's devotion. That is
Yeah.
like the word. I am utterly devoted to it. And I think most homeopaths are. You don't generally do it for any other reason than, it is a pure vocation. And that is, so I sort of thought, Lisa, maybe you do need to get some more hobbies in your life, other than just reading all the time. But I've always like been a bookworm ever since I was tiny. So I literally taught myself to read before I could go to school. I think I was a bit of a Matilda and just read. So that's me. Sorry, it's a bit sad. Yeah.
That is a loaded question if you ask someone their hobbies. And I mean, it's one thing when people are, and I always say I feel for the people who feel, whether it's genuine adrenal fatigue or just the fact that their soul is not in their work, where they're just like, oh, just work a lot and kind of come home and do the thing. Is like, I get it. I understand why people have landed there. I am committed to the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible, and there is a
Mm.
difference. Lack of imagination, as if we can't imagine a life where that's not the case. I also feel for people like my love upstairs, who is an avid knitter, and her hands and her eyes and her attention are busy. Like she can't hold a book. I'm getting her into more podcast. I mean, we've been listening to The Way Forward, which has been great, because I mean, I think Alec is having the most important conversations week in and week out, because it is
Mm.
about health, spirituality, law, all things that are supportive of health. I mean, my own, I talk about portals, and I mean your work is a portal. His what he puts out there is a portal. Veda Austin's work is a portal, because it does
I
transport
love,
you.
I love that. I love that. Do you know what? I haven't heard anyone say that
Mm.
before, but that you are spot on.
That's
Absolutely.
how it feels, right? I mean, I'm sure you've had
Yeah.
that experience. As it transport you. You've spoken about it today, quite eloquently. Is yeah, then you just have a new worldview. Especially, I mean, the depths of philosophy that I hope people will. I mean, I didn't make you, you know, elucidate too much on just the philosophical, the wisdom depths of this new way of looking at healing as a process. Like I said, I mean, less is more. Some people are really going to have their work cut out for them to honor that, but it does require some shifts, and there are some universal truths with a capital T that people do have to sort out for themselves. And law has been a big one for me to realize that, uh, above and beyond anything else, I am for. Well, I mean, there are spiritual components to this, but in this realm, I am a man. I'm not a citizen, taxpayer, resident, homeowner, employee, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all titles that I think lead us, Lisa, into, if you identify with a title. I mean, I joke about this when people ask me what position I played in football, and I w- I now say I played, not I was or I
Mm.
am. I play tennis. I say I am a tennis coach, but the language is very important, because otherwise, if we say, uh, you know, whatever comes after I am, like I said, and if it's a title that you surrender your power to. Yes, I am a citizen of the United States. Yes, I am an American. Yes, I'm a good citizen. I'm a taxpayer.
Mm.
Uh, then we get into titles and the prescriptions that come with that and the expectations that come with that. And I'm trying to unravel all of those. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's binding for sure. If people just don't realize, I think we'll bring this home with a health question, and I like to borrow this from my man, Jared Picard, who was one of the leaders of our men's group, when he would ask guests, what do you think is the most needed medicine of our time? And I will qualify this by saying, if you would give thought to maybe mental emotional medicine, because we do have, and I know homeopathy fits that bill as well. We've certainly given the credence to that today, but something in your experience, Lisa, that you found to be a very potent mental emotional medicine that you think people may be in need of at this time?
I do think homeopathy, but I also think the other is quite nuanced. But the other modality in terms of sort of mental and emotional, perhaps more specific, but family constellation work or systemic constellation, that was almost like brutal in terms
Really?
of like like the way you can describe it. It's like doing 6 months of therapy in like an hour or a couple of hours.
Oh,
It was
I didn't know it was that intense. Holy God.
it was like the most. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all. There's
Just aware of it. Just aware of it. Yeah.
the Netflix. I know it's on Netflix, but the Netflix series, what's it called? Another Self. It's
Hmm.
Turkish, but it is subtitled. And they depict, it is fiction, but they depict family constellations, and it's very accurate. And
Oh,
actually, the family, the people that I've done to work with two different practitioners, both amazing, and they've both said that's a great thing for people to watch if they want to learn more. But it is another level. I'm not into group work at all. I know the thought of group work is something, but for some reason I felt called to go on a constellation. I've done it on my own as well, but for me it was much more powerful. It was really powerful in a group, and I've never cried so much with a bunch of strangers where we were all crying. I thought we looked like we deserved to be in the nut house, if anyone walking past. It was
whoa.
insane. So yeah, that is something I would particularly if there's any issues with like family. Well, everyone has energy blocks with their ancestors to some extent. So yeah, I would encourage everyone, just for curiosity alone, to look into that.
Sounds like some courage as a contingency for that. If you're, I mean, and
Well, I don't want to put anyone off, but it
no,
was
but
just
I mean,
intense.
well, and as much as and I'm shifting this for myself as well. As much as we talk about the great work and things like that are some work, there are aspects of our spiritual journey that are play, and it is fun on the, to look back, and you have a good sense of humor about about your own emotional experience there, and that's what we do. Is eventually I think we do laugh. There is the cosmic laugh that comes through at some point where you can laugh at your pain and you laugh at who you were, and you're laughing just that release of like, I'm
Mm.
through, and I've gone inward, upward, and onward, as I like to say. uh Lisa, this I have not necessarily expectations. I mean, we're virtual strangers. Like I said, I have the advantage of having listened to you before, and yet I like to flow. I don't have too many prepared questions to couch our discussion, and yet I can say this was above and beyond what I had hoped. You're so
Oh,
forthcoming,
thank
and
you.
again, your energy and passion shines through very brightly, even through this medium. This is what I'm grateful for. What we get to do, even virtually, is this is the best use of this platform and this technology. Is we get to circulate our gifts, we get to expand. I mean, even if this lands with one more person, who decides to pick up the mantle for themselves of being their own physician and being their own healer, then that's absolutely worthwhile. So I thank you deeply, and I'm happy to give you the last word if there's any parting message you'd wish to share.
I just want to say thank you so much. Really, like, you're doing amazing work, and it's really an honor to come on and talk about homeopathy. And everyone listening, please just go and buy Aconite and Arnica, if nothing else, and download the free guide off my website, and it will have those two remedies amongst the 11, so you'll know when to use them. Just do it, and you will be grateful for it in the long run.
That's an emphatic final word, and I endorse what you said. Show notes galore will have everything that people need because we are, like I said, I am doing my best to be a connector and a curator, and you shared with us many gifts today, Lisa. So thank you so much, and I'll look forward to just being someone you consider just another node of your network over here.
Thank you so much.